All right, cool. Well, I am Jay Cassario, and I am one half of the husband and wife team, Cass Imaging, right now, and we are a wedding and portrait photography business. We started the business around 3 years ago. Um, right around that time, I started to get more involved with writing, um, the gear end of things, about answering different questions about gear, and I ended up becoming a writer for SLR Lounge, which is, one of the bigger educational photography websites that's out there, along with F-Stoppers and a couple others. Um, but that was pretty big to help get my name out there and get my work shown to everybody. A little bit more exposure. Getting to know the guys that run Lynn and Jersa Photography was a big help. So the past 3 years have been pretty crazy. I never expected my business to take off as good as it did. And then, it's been catching up, and it's been a whirlwind, but it's been very, very cool, very exciting, and it has made life very interesting, I can tell you that.
Okay, cool. Well, you sound like a very busy man, so I'm very grateful for your time today. I'm just going to try and pull something on the screen here just to show the viewers your Cass Imaging page.
Cool.
So let me see if I can bring that up. All right, so here we go. That's you and Sandy, obviously. So you shoot with your wife, is that right?
Yeah, it was something that neither one of us ever expected to happen. And once we started, I realized to run the wedding business was going to be a lot of work. I was still working full time. Which was a job that was pretty grueling. So, I knew that if I wanted the business to grow as quickly as I knew it could, I knew I needed help. And she was a little bit into photography, not as much as I was, but, we kind of sat down and talked about it and decided, you know what, let's just do it together. We'll shoot together. Husband and wife teams are pretty popular with the bride and groom because we can split up. Sandy can go with the bride. I can go with the groom with wedding prep when they're getting dressed, and it works out good. So we gave it a shot for a few months, and it wouldn't have worked unless she completely fell in love with it. And for me, I lucked out because she did, and it only helped our business grow because it was the two of us together. And a lot of clients come to us because we do shoot together. So yeah, I can't imagine not doing it without her. Or I'm sorry, I can't imagine doing it without her now. So.
Okay, cool. And right, so a little bird has told me that there's going to be a bit of a change in your business structure. I heard about a merger. Is that right?
You heard correctly. Very mixed emotions. Crazy. It was something that we dabbled in a year ago. Another photographer friend of mine approached me with an idea of, our work is similar. We both have more of an artistic, creative edge to our work. And he was like, you know what, it would be really cool if we just joined forces and took over the world. So this past month he brought it up again, and we've got to know each other a little bit better. We've got to shoot weddings together. He's got to know my wife. We've got to hang out a lot. I've got to know his business, he's got to know mine, and we decided, you know what, let's give it a shot.
Is he part of the merger, that one over there?
He's coming with us. So, yeah, it's pretty exciting. The idea is I'm pretty tapped out right now with as much as I can do with me and Sandy. So the ultimate goal is to be able to build a studio to where I can bring on more photographers underneath of us, bring in video, all different things that I couldn't offer with just me and Sandy under Cass Imaging. So it'll be pretty cool to see what happens. A little nerve-wracking. It's like starting all over again with the business, but this is a second run of it, so it's pretty fun.
Okay, cool. And how many weddings are you actually shooting per year at the moment?
Sorry. So this past year we booked, 2013 we booked a little over 20, like 25, I think, 24. And then for 2015 we booked over 40. So Wow. Our goal was 35. Our goal the previous year was 20. So like I said, we've only been doing it for 3 years. and we bypassed our goals by some pretty big numbers. I never expected to book over 40 weddings for 2015, and with that amount of weddings, with me and Sandy, we just had our first kid, Luke. So we want to try to spend as much time with him. And the business can take it's a lot of work. Late nights, editing. This way we can kind of split the business end up a little bit also with our partner now that's going to be joining us. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely. So you said you started in 2012. That's 3 years ago, and then last year, which was only 2 years ago, you booked 40 weddings, which is that's incredible growth. What attributed to this sudden surge in bookings? Is there anything in particular? Or?
So me and Sandy often try to figure this question out. It's definitely a lot quicker than we expected it to happen. Like I said, we kind of set goals, and we thought, it would be awesome if we could reach these goals, but we didn't set them too far, and we ended up passing them. So there's a lot of factors we think that played into growing as quick as we did. One of them is we are a husband and wife team, and I feel like clients seem to be attracted to that. And our style is a little bit different. In our area, there's a lot of very clean-cut photographers. Their work is very similar, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's good photography. But when we started, we wanted to, in order to help get us separated from the pack and kind of stand out just a little bit, we went with a more artistic approach. I was an artist my whole life growing up, so we took more edgy view on how we shot with the gear we shot, our editing style, and it seemed to work. It caught a lot of attention, and a lot of brides would come to us for that. Something as simple as lens flare, which it can be overdone at times, and it's something that people either like or they don't like. But it was something that I incorporated into. Along with clean images, I would incorporate, different techniques like lens flare. I would do tilt shift shots, very shallow depth of field, but then at the same time, wide open to where I can get everything in the scene and just get starbursts or sunbursts. So it was more of an edgy look, and I think at the time, these past 2 years, in our area, there had been a very clean-cut, kind of way of doing weddings. So it definitely helped us stand out and get things rolling.
Okay, and then from you mentioned the merger. Are you able to mention who's it going to be with yet, or you want to keep that under wraps?
Oh no, definitely. Right now we're working on a logo design. We're working on a web design. All of this is stuff that I've always done myself in the past. So it's pretty cool to have someone else do it. It's a struggle to design your own logo, but at the beginning, when you're short on cash, you make do with what you can do. So his name is J.D. Land. He's from 215 Photography. Very talented photographer. He is very business savvy, and we make a good match. He has strengths where I have weaknesses. And we really feel like we can lift each other up and push each other to, do even bigger and better things. So I'm interested to see how we do together.
Okay, great. And how did you actually meet? Is it JD?
So me and JD met. He actually found me on SLR Lounge, one of my articles, and realized I was local to him. And he had reached out to me and just said, "Hey, you want to catch up for a drink, talk about business?" So we did that. And that was over a year ago. And, we kind of hit it off. We went out shooting a couple times, hung out a lot outside of business, and then we started to shoot weddings a little bit together. And we worked awesome together. It was a lot of fun. So like I said, we had definitely dabbled in the idea of this merger in the past, but it was you never want to get involved in any type of business merger with someone that you really don't know that well. I mean, you can see businesses fall apart when it's family members that do it. So we both realize the risks that are involved, but at the same time, we're both pretty confident in what we want to get out of this and what we want to see this merger do. And he's a little wacky.
This is a merger, right? He doesn't want a new person.
He's excited. So yeah, it's he I forgot what I was talking about. But
yeah, no, that's cool. You answered the question. So I just brought up this JD's work. It's similar, I guess, in ways to yours. In other ways, it's quite different. And I've noticed, first of all, that the editing is totally different. So how are you going to manage that to make it look like a seamless product?
Yeah, it's actually an awesome question, Mark. Like I said, about a month ago when we decided to, let's sit down and have some meetings, go over if we do merge, how we would do things. And like you said, one of those things, one of the big things was you need to have uniformity throughout the entire business. If somebody gets their wedding shot by JD, we want it to look the same as if it got shot by me or any of our associate photographers when they come on board. So we decided, we just said, you know what, let's pick one of our editing styles and we'll go with it. So we're going to stick with my editing style. I'm going to sit down with him over the next couple of weeks, show him exactly how I edit, incorporate maybe a little bit of the things that he does, but come up with a few presets that we'll use. And, we can drift a little bit in our blog posts, but as far as what we give the client, we're going to keep it all strictly edited exactly the same. And we're also going to try to start outsourcing some of our editing, which is something new to me, but it's a big time saver, as you know. So the editing company that we're planning on using is one that lets you, they work with you. You give them a preset or a couple presets that you like, and they try to emulate your look, your style. So we're gonna go in my style, and then hopefully work with this editing company to keep things going and have them, we'll outsource to them.
Okay, great. What's the name of the editing company?
You know what, Mark? I forget off the top of my head.
Okay, no worries.
JD found one. It's a pretty reasonable price, and I know he's found good reviews on them. But the name, I can't remember. That's
okay. We'll put it in the post afterwards.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I've been interviewing all this week, and I met up with Lanny and Erica Mann from Two Man Studios, and then we had Lindsay and Daniel Stark, and you know what? Both of them said the same thing about outsourcing their post-production. So I think, especially in the past year, that's been a big change in the industry, especially for busy professionals like you guys, relinquishing some of that creative, basically, that's a big part of our photography, isn't it? We take the photos, and then the post-processing, I'd say, is 50%, sometimes even more. That's our creative workflow. So relinquishing that huge part of it is quite a big thing for us. So obviously, you've done it because of the getting busier aspect, and that's generally the main reason why people do it. How have you felt about actually outsourcing that?
So it's something I've thought about doing in the past, and it's a little nerve-wracking because I know that I built my business on my editing style.
Exactly.
The amount of time, endless hours and late nights dabbling with different color techniques and, how to make my images have, my look to them. So as much as I would love to step away from the computer at night, spend time with my wife and kid, I get nervous that I'm going to lose a little bit there. But at the same time, I've talked to a lot of photographers that do outsource their work, and if you have a good company that will work with you and that can emulate your look as close as possible, then I'm definitely willing to take a chance. As much as you love, as photographers, we all love the shooting part of it, the social part of it. Some of us, we do enjoy the editing, but when you're at the computer and you're there for 3-4 hours a night, it can get a little tedious. So I'm gonna give it a shot. Hopefully it works out, and I'm confident that it will. But like you said, I'm a little nervous, but I'm sure it'll go good.
Yeah, maybe we can touch base in about 6 months, and perhaps you can tell us how it's gone for you. And yeah, it might be something that I'd like to do as a wedding photographer in the future.
Yep, no doubt.
Okay, cool. So moving on, the reason why I've got you here today is to talk about gear. And I know that you know a lot about gear. You use a lot of different gear yourself. I'm just going to bring up your Shotkit on the screen here right now. Just so that everyone at home, if they haven't seen it already, head over to Shotkit and check out Jay's incredible gear setup. So just looking at this photo, I'm going to go from left to right. Correct me if I'm wrong in any of these. So you've got, actually, you know what? You do it, Jay.
Yeah, and you know what? While you're pulling this up, it's still pretty funny to look at this and see the mess of gear that I use.
If you could just go through naming from top left down to bottom right. Don't say anything about the product. So just the names, please.
Yep. So top left is just a Minolta 35mm film camera. I picked up off Craigslist a few years ago. That when I was learning film, I pretty much used that to teach myself. And then right below that, we have the Nikon DF. Right next to that is the newer Nikon D750. Below them are actually three out of my 4 Nikon lenses. So I don't have too many lenses per manufacturer, but I have the Sigma 35mm Art series on the bottom left. And then in the middle I have the 58mm 1.4G. And to the right of that, I have the 85mm 1.8G. I actually tested that one head-to-head with the 1.4, and for the price difference, I ended up sticking with the 1.8 and got rid of the 1.4.
Interesting.
So now, the middle, I have one of my favorite cameras, is my medium format Mamiya RZ67, which is a film camera. I love it because it has a Polaroid back to it, which I find very fun. It's awesome for weddings, just to give the bride and groom something that day, something physical. And with medium format, even a Polaroid looks pretty killer. So right below that is my newest edition, which is the Sony A7 Mark II. Below that is a Polaroid. Actually, for some reason, I'm having a brain fart, and I can't remember the name of that one. And it's probably because it all of a sudden doesn't work for me anymore. So I got to get it looked at. So to the right is the Leica M9, which is a rangefinder camera. It's a full frame. Yeah, we'll get into some more Leica stuff later. But below that is the Canon 5D Mark III and 5D Mark II. Below those are just the 4 Canon lenses that I own, and I believe left to right it's the 24mm 1.4, and to the right of that is the 35mm 1.4, then the 50 1.2, and the 45mm tilt shift lens. And then in the middle, actually I forgot one. You see that little bag right there?
Yeah.
They are the extension tubes for macro work. I used to have the 105 macro lens for Canon, and actually one of the writers for SLR Lounge did a review on those extension tubes, and I can't remember the name of them, but for macro work, for like ring shots, there's 3 of them in that bag, and you can toss them on any lens that you have. They're for Nikon though, so I use them for my Nikon lenses, and it gives you some pretty awesome macro shots for rings.
Okay, great. And then top left, that bag, are you still using that? That's the owner Astoria?
Yes, it is.
Okay, cool.
I love that bag.
I'll leave the link. Sorry to interrupt. I'll leave the link. You wrote an awesome review on that, so yeah, I'll drop the link in. I'm glad to see you're still using it.
Yep, definitely. It has taken a beating. And because of that worn leather look, it looks brand new from the day I got it, and I mean, believe me, it has taken a beating, and it is held up really good. So I love that bag.
Awesome, yeah, it looks great. Okay, so I'm going to run, since we've got your work on the screen already here, I'm just going to run through these photos super quickly. If you could just tell us, if you can remember, what camera you used and what lens, and then we'll talk more in detail afterwards.
All right, cool. So this one was shot actually just recently at WPPI. We took a ride out to the desert, and the only camera I brought with me to Las Vegas was my new Sony A7 II and the Leica 50mm 1.4 Summilux lens. I believe that's how you pronounce it. But yeah, so it was the Sony A7 II and the Leica lens.
Okay, cool. And then the next one, is that the same setup?
That's the same exact setup, yep. And there's a little bit more depth of field to that shot because that was a 22 or 23 image panorama, a Brenizer method they call it.
Yeah. All right, awesome. Yeah, I was wondering about that. I didn't actually realize that you'd done a Brenizer, and I was like, holy crap, this camera lens combination is like 3D. Anyway, we'll get back to that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so how about this flare?
So this one is, and that flare is one of the reasons I love Leica. And you know, like I said earlier, a lot of people can think it's overdone or it's they don't like it, but it's something that if I don't do it too much, it looks good. So this was with the Leica M9 and actually this was with a Voigtlander 35mm 1.4. For a Leica lens, it's on the cheaper side. I think you can pick one up for like $500. So this shot was the very first time I ever used a Leica, and it was probably the biggest selling point for me.
Okay, great. Yeah, that flare, it's very, it's different to any other flare that I've seen from the big name lens makers.
Yep.
I don't think you get something like that out of a Canon or a Nikon. Anyway, we'll get back to talking about Leica.
Yep.
So black and white one, what did you shoot there?
This was actually, I threw this in, I don't remember exactly what I shot this with, but I'm pretty sure this was with the Nikon D800, and I actually used the 24 to 70 millimeter zoom that I no longer have, the 2.8 version. I had never done a shot like this with the sparklers. So I kind of wanted a lens where I could have a little bit more movability. So I threw the 24 to 70 on, and I had a flash on, and this happened so quick. I had to just hope that I got a shot. And this is probably one of my favorite exit shots for a wedding that I've gotten.
Yeah, it's awesome. You captured it perfectly. Right, the next one.
That is also the Leica M9 with, I believe, the same thing, the 50mm f1.4 Summilux ASPH version.
Okay, great. And moving swiftly on.
This is, you're testing me, Mark.
Yeah.
This is the, I'm pretty sure this was the DF, the Nikon DF with the 58 1.4G.
Yeah, cool. I was going to help you out there. I remember this image because you used this one for the review. So
yep.
Yeah, you passed.
Awesome.
Okay, great. So I assume this one's of Sandy before she had Luke. Is that right?
Yep, exactly. This was actually on the same trip as the shot right before. This one I used the 5D Mark II and the 45mm tilt shift.
Okay, cool. Almost done. This one I love.
This one, I went out with the bride and groom, and I randomly wanted to grab one camera. I grabbed the 5D Mark III and the 35mm 1.4, and I shot it wide open. I think I only took 1 or 2 shots, and I looked and seen that I got exactly what I wanted. So I was happy with the choice I made. Yeah,
and is that haziness on the right-hand side? Is that part of the veil as well?
Yeah, that's part of the veil. And yeah, it looks I was shocked because I thought it would be a little bit brighter, but I kind of like that you can see through it a little bit more.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Okay, and another one of my favorites.
This was the DF, the Nikon DF, and it was one of the first shoots I did with the 58mm 1.4.
Okay, great. And was this a bride or is that a model?
That was a stylized shoot, so she was a model.
Okay, yeah, that figures. Yep. She knows how to pose, or you posed her.
One or the other, I forget.
Okay, how about this one? Super blown out, but cool.
So very blown out, and I was purposely going for the flare on this one. And this was another client that came to me, and they loved the look of the flare, and they wanted it. So I tried to not overdo it with the highlights, but the Leica does a good job of holding detail. So this was with the Leica M9 and the 50mm Summilux lens.
Okay, great. And then another black and white one.
Same thing. Leica M9 and the Leica 50mm Summilux.
Okay, cool. Last one.
The 5D Mark III and the 45mm tilt shift.
Awesome. All right, well done. Good memory.
Yeah, not bad, right?
Okay, cool. Right, let me bring this back. Bring you back, rather. Okay, so yeah, just everyone watching this. Obviously, we're talking about gear here, particularly because it's something that we're both very interested in. I'm sure a lot of you guys are as well. I wanted to break down each of those photos and ask you what camera and lens combination you use to take them, simply because you use a whole lot of different gear. So I thought that would be interesting. But just as a side note, obviously, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're in this situation and you've got all those cameras, you can get pretty close with each camera to the photo that you took there. Perhaps not with the lenses, but just so that if an amateur photographer is watching this and they're thinking, oh my God, I could never afford to shoot with 6 different bodies. Yeah, perhaps you can just just say a bit more on that, on the gear issue and gas and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. The funny thing is, like you said, when I first started, you do, and it's every photographer that you and me know. When you first get started, you have you lust after all the gear that you see everybody has, and I was the same way. But right away, when you start a business and your wife's involved, you're very careful about what you spend money on. And when she was right there to yell at me if I was spending too much money. So I started with Nikon, and there were certain limitations with Nikon that I really thought that Canon did better. And I said, instead of always wondering, because I was reviewing equipment for SLR Lounge, I decided, all right, what, let me borrow some Canon equipment from B&H Photo, and I took them both on a wedding, and I shot them both. And there's very big differences. Canon was awesome with skin tones and colors. Nikon was much better in dynamic range and high ISO. But either one, no matter what, will get the job done. Like you said, I would be completely fine shooting with just Nikon or just Canon. But I was like, what? If I take advantage of the strengths of Canon and the strengths of Nikon, I was just curious how it would go. And instead of having a ton of lenses for one manufacturer or the other, I was like, what? Let me get good at a few lenses. As you can see, I only have 3 or 4 of each manufacturer, and I'll pick my favorites. Once I do that, then I'll use the bodies that, at the times that I felt that they were strongest. So in low light conditions, I would use Nikon. If it was sunny like it is today and the sun's really bright, and I'm not worried about bumping my ISO up, Canon for the look I was going for, Canon did a better job. The colors look more vibrant. They look more, natural. Where Nikon, I felt the colors weren't as good. So depending on the shoot, depending on the scenario, I would grab one or the other. But at the same time, like you said, either would do the job just fine. I was being over picky, and I still am. I'm over picky. But a lot of photographers will spend the money on lenses, and they'll have every lens that Nikon makes, every lens Canon makes. I'm completely happy with just shooting 3 lenses, and I can get the job done. So I took a little bit away from my lens collection to make up with a couple extra bodies, and it's worked for me. So it's a unique way of doing it. I've run into a couple other photographers that do something similar, but yeah, it's pretty hard to find a photographer with the slew of different gear that I have.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, like you could be shooting one camera, one lens, or like you're doing. At the end of the day, if it leads to you being creative and getting something that you're happy with, it doesn't really matter what tools you use. Like you hear a lot recently, don't complicate things. Don't bring 15 lenses with you, which I agree with. But then on the other hand, if it works for you, then there's a lot of guys on Shotkit who are killing it, and they've got an arsenal of zooms. They don't even shoot primes. So yeah, for anyone who's watching and they're wondering where to start, then start small. If you build up a collection, that's cool if it works for you. If you're like Jay and you're using like 10 different systems, then yeah, I think that's crazy, but it's obviously working for Jay. It might work for you. So how do you handle, do you want to go ahead, Jay?
I'm just going to say, like you said, it can be overwhelming, and I early on, I hated switching lenses with my cameras, and that was one of the benefits. Where, you know what? All right, if I had one camera on each hip, and each one had a different focal length prime lens, like say a 24 and an 85 or a 50 and a 35, I wouldn't have to change lenses, and I would force myself to use those two lenses, not to worry about what was in my bag, not to worry, you know, would a 70 to 200 be better for this scenario? It was, all right, I'm going to use these two lenses on these two bodies, and I'm going to make this shot work. And it forces you to be more creative. You have to, especially with a prime, you have to move around. You know, if there's a tree in my way, you know, and I can't shoot past it with a zoom, then, you know, I can use it now creatively, which I might not have done before. So it is, if you're just starting out, especially, look at it as, from a minimalist point of view, is the less amount of gear, the better. It'll push you to be more creative, push you to think outside of the box a little bit more, and not rely on equipment, like you said.
Sure. So on a wedding day, you're taking a few different systems with you. How do you manage swapping between one and the other? Like, that must be such a head F.
So I think it used to be. And I think because I owned two of the same bodies one time. I bought two D800s, and within a few months, I wasn't really a huge fan of that camera. So I rarely used both of them side by side. So I've always used different cameras. So you're right. You know, switching back and forth between two cameras and different menus or different button setups, I've just gotten used to it somehow. And it's funny because my wife is the same way. You know, I taught her a lot of the photography she knows for the past couple of years, and I taught her on both Canon, Nikon, even the Leica, and it's pretty funny to see how she'll do the same thing. She'll just reach for one or the other, and I look at it like almost like, wow, that's like, how are you doing that? And I'm like, oh yeah, I do it too. So yeah, it's something that I got used to, but for somebody just starting out, it can definitely be a little confusing, and to have two similar bodies it's definitely helpful, I would say.
Yeah, cool. I'm terrible at multitasking, so yeah, I'd be an absolute disaster in that situation. All right, so you started out with the Nikon and the Canon. We're here today to talk about a Sony body, the Sony Alpha series. So it's the A7 II. So maybe, have you got that there with you, Jay?
I do, actually. And it's pretty funny because, like I said, and you've seen all the lenses I use are primes, and right now I have this 70 to 200 f4 on here, only because I'm actually reviewing this for B&H photography, and I'm comparing it to the Nikon 70 to 200 f4. So it's actually, to have a big long lens on here is actually killing the point of why I have this A7 II, with it being extra light and extra small. But to be honest with you, this is an impressive lens. But back to the camera, this is it. It's a little guy. I have a Gariz, I think it's called, leather case, and it adds just a little bit to the bottom, and it just gives me enough room to just get my pinky on there. So
okay. Sorry, Jay, can you take the lens off just for 1 second, just so we can see the size of the body on its own?
Yep.
And then hold it up a little bit higher. Cool. So you said you got the leather case on it. Can you point that out to me?
Yep. So the leather case is, if you can see, it adds just a little bit to the bottom.
Okay.
It gives you just enough to put your pinky finger on. I mean, I have big hands, so you know, a tiny camera isn't what I would be interested in. But this is super light. And now, you know, my whole hand can grip it, which is nice.
Okay, cool. So without the case, is that easy for you to slip off there, just so that we can see what it looks like without it?
Yeah. I think it is. Maybe not. Oh,
yeah, no worries if it's not then. Nope. And if you can hold it up so we can see it actually coming off, I just want to gauge the size of the camera compared to the size of the case, because it's hard for me to tell there. Oh, okay, right, so it's only adding like a centimeter or so, but that's enough for your pinky to rest on.
Yeah, so if you look, if I hold it like this, my pinky finger has nothing to, it's just hanging out there in the air. So, yeah, this gives it just enough to where I can I can get a good grip on it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's a big thing for me. That's why I didn't rock with the DF in the first place, because we're both, we both got big hands. And I remember you saying with the DF that you preferred it if, you had the battery grip on, or at least something so that, oh no, you didn't. You said that it worked for you, but it might not work for some people. It didn't work for me.
And I ended up buying this company makes a case, I think for a lot of different cameras, but I have the same case for my DF. And same thing, it works the same exact way. Just enough room to put my pinky finger on the bottom and a little bit more extra meat to grip onto, which is all I need.
Okay, cool. I'm going to ask you just to tip the monitor so it points a little bit further down if possible, so that way you don't have to lift the camera up so high when you're talking about it. Okay, so I'm just going to let you give me a rundown about this camera. Assume I know nothing about it, so just first of all, the features, just briefly.
All right, so the features on this guy is you have the swivel screen. It's not very flimsy. It's actually pretty robust, pretty sturdy, and that actually comes in handy. I never thought a swivel screen would come in handy, but anytime you want to shoot low to the ground, you can put this guy right on the ground and then just pull the LCD out and see what you get. And it's a very responsive LCD. You can do live view, which is very responsive. So as far as other features, we have, compared to the A7, which I never was interested in the A7 until this guy came out. And the image stabilization was the huge thing with this. So it has in-camera image stabilization. I believe it's the first of its kind that has that. And to shoot a prime lens, the rule of thumb is to match your shutter speed to the focal length of your lens. So with a 50mm lens, you want to shoot at a minimum shutter speed of, 1/50th of a second. With the image stabilization on this guy, I can shoot down to 1/15th. I think I pushed it to, and I can get a sharp image. I don't have to worry about shake. Now, the subject, if I'm taking a picture of my crazy cat running around the house, you'll catch that movement. But as far as, if you're shooting a wedding and you're posing the bride and groom, and for the most part they're still, it'll get you a sharp image, which I can't say about with any of my other cameras. So that was huge for me, especially if, you're going to use a zoom like the 70-200 and it's f4. Most of them come with image stabilization built into the lens, but now you have it built into the camera, and that was really the biggest selling point to me. And then you have the light body, the small body. You have a different button layout. I believe with the A7 the shutter button was up here. Now it's a little bit more what you're used to with a DSLR. To be honest, it's not much smaller than the D750, but it's smaller and it's lighter. And the cool thing is, they make a ton of different adapters, and I can shoot my Leica lenses on here. And if anybody knows Leica lenses, they're not very cheap, which is why I only own 2 of them. But the fact that, a Leica camera can be a little limited in low light, this guy, when you can drop the shutter speed, and it does good at high ISO settings, the Leica lenses are a little bit more valuable to me then. So overall, I borrowed this to just review, and I ended up buying it. So I love it, absolutely love it.
Okay, cool. And in terms of the lenses that you can put on there, have you actually shot with any of the proprietary Sony ones?
So this is the first Sony lens I've shot with. It's the the 70-200. Overall, it's an f4, which isn't the best in low light, but I mean it's sharp. It's super sharp, and I can drop the shutter speed. At 200 millimeters, I can drop the shutter speed down to like 1/50th of a second, and still get a sharp image, which is crazy. So as far as other lenses with Sony, I haven't had the chance since I've only had the camera for about a month now. But I'm definitely interested to try some because with using like Leica lenses, you lose the autofocus function. So I'm manually focusing everything, which I've gotten used to. But it'd be nice, you know, if Sony, you know, throw a Sony lens on there and have it kick butt and have autofocus at the same time.
Okay, and how are you liking the files out of the A7 II? Let's compare them to your Nikons and your Canons.
As far as the images, they're actually very similar to color-wise to my Nikon cameras, and mostly in part to the fact that Nikon, especially the D750, uses a Sony sensor. So the colors are what I'm used to with my Nikon cameras. They're very similar. The images are, you know, a lot of times it's the lenses that, you know, dictate how sharp an image is, but the images are very crisp, very sharp. Before I bought this, my Leica camera, the M9, was one of the sharpest cameras I shot, and that was with any lens, Voigtlander, the cheaper lenses to the more expensive Leica lenses, and this camera is just as sharp. Low light, I just had somebody ask me how good it did in low light, and I shot him a few images that I shot at ISO 2500, and he's a Nikon shooter, and he was really impressed. He actually didn't think that it did that good in low light, and so ISO dynamic range is really good. I'll be writing a review, so I will try to throw up as many sample images as I can.
Okay, cool. And is it safe to say that you'll be taking this instead of your Nikon and Canon to the next wedding, or as well as?
I'll be bringing it along with, definitely. I have a wedding this Saturday that I'm shooting with JD from 215, who I'm merging with, and he has one of these as well. He just bought this past week, so we'll both be shooting with him. And then I'll probably bring. He's a Canon shooter, so I'll probably bring this and my 2 Canon cameras with me.
Okay, great. So if we get down to nitty-gritty, what advantages can you see of using this Sony over, let's start with the 750, the Nikon D750, which I use. I know you love it as well. A lot of people love it. Let's start with the advantages of this Sony over that.
So absolutely, I love the D750. The advantages and the reasons I bought this were, to be honest with you, it was strictly 2 things. The image stabilization, which the D750 doesn't have, and the fact that it gave me another camera body that I could use my Leica lenses on. So those 2 things, really. As far as image quality, it doesn't outdo the D750 at all. Images look very similar. Low light, dynamic range. I actually think the D750 does a little bit better in dynamic range. I haven't fully, compared them, but just going through images, it looks like it lags a little bit behind the D750. But yeah, just image stabilization and to be able to use my Leica lenses with it.
Okay, cool. And how about over your 5D Mark III?
So, 5D Mark III. I have grown lately to, ever since the D750 and the DF, my Canons don't, I know Canon shooters are going to hate me for this, my Canons don't come out of the bag all that often. The only time my Canons come out of the bag is when it's super sunny, lighting is perfect, or I'm using a flash or off-camera flash. So, as far as comparing it to the Canons that I own, it's better ISO performance, better dynamic range. It's lighter. Like I said, the swivel screen comes in handy every now and then. And I've thought about actually buying an adapter for my Canon lenses because I love my Canon lenses. It's one of the reasons I stuck with Canon. Excuse me.
That's so, Canon phoning. They're saying that they never want you to review a product every day.
And it was next one's going to be Nikon saying thank you. So yeah, I thought about buying an adapter because I know a couple photographers that switched from shooting Canon to the the Sony A7 Mark II and bought an adapter to use the Canon lenses. Like I love my 50mm L 1.2. For my shooting style, I love it, and I've thought about buying an adapter, but I don't really want to lose that autofocus. So while I'm still toying with the idea, I think I'm going to just hold on to just the adapter for Leica. But yeah, Canon's with the struggle with dynamic range and shooting in low light, they've become pretty difficult to pull out of the bag lately.
Okay, cool. Right, I'm going to move swiftly on before you shoot yourself in the foot. I see that little red Leica logo poking out over your head there in the background in that cool the bag that you have. Do you have the lenses in there? Could you grab those for us?
Yeah, I actually have. I figured you'd be asking about it, so I had it out. So I actually only have one of the lenses in that bag. It's the Voigtlander lens I have in there. So this, before the Sony, this is what I used to be a little bit more creative in my shots, if I wanted to add a little bit more artistry to my shots. And the reason I say that is because it is a completely different experience shooting with this camera. Because it's a rangefinder, you're looking through a little window here, rather than looking through the lens. You know, because the window is right on the edge, you can see everything coming into frame. You can see everything outside of the frame. It forces you to slow down because it's not super quick. The shutter sounds more like a film camera, and the colors are more vibrant. And this is the M9. It's a little bit. They still make it, but it's a version or model behind. The new one is the M240, which I actually owned for a few months, and I ended up keeping this one. The newer one actually looked very similar to Nikon images and Canon images of today because it has a CMOS sensor. This has a Kodak sensor, so the images they stand out. They look different. Somehow they managed to have more of a 3D look to them. There's definitely more of a depth of field, and it's funny because you'll hear Leica guys that shoot Leica will tell you that there is a Leica magic when you look at the images. And you know, at first I didn't think too much into it, but you know, comparing images right next to each other, they look different. They stand out. But it comes at a price. This was a very expensive investment. You know, for a camera that's very simple, you go through the menu on here and there's like 20 options. That's it. Compared to, you know, the Canon, the DSLRs of today, there's, you know, pages and pages of menus. This is made to set up, shoot. Nothing's going to get in your way. No settings. It just does its job. And the lenses are the same. They're very simple. Everything's manual. They're the sharpest lenses I've ever used, and they have that unique flare that you see in the images. I've never got a flare like that with, you know, any of my Nikon or Canon lenses because most of them, the higher end lenses, they do everything they can to block that flare. You know, with the special coatings they use. And that's good because you know, you're shooting a wedding, you want those clean images. But when I don't want those clean images and I want to be a little bit more artistic, I grab for this, or now I throw this lens onto the Sony. And it just gives me a different look, helps me be a little bit more creative, think a little bit differently when I shoot. And it's honestly, it's helped me grow as a photographer. And it's taught me a lot, which is, you know, it's crazy to think about that a piece of gear would make you a better photographer, but it's actually just the way you shoot it and the way it makes you slow down, look at things a little bit differently, look at the whole scene rather than just pick the camera up and start firing away. So it was well worth the investment, believe me. If it wasn't, my wife would have had my head.
Yeah, that's Luke's first year of school right there.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, so just for those who are watching who might not know much about Leica, just to clear this up, the M9 is a digital camera. It's Leica's obviously known for film format, but just so that people at home don't get confused, this is a digital camera. So is it safe to say that, I know you're swapping those Leica lenses with your Sony now and shooting with a Sony body, is it safe to say that that Leica look, that 3D look that you're talking about, is due to the lenses, or you actually think that it's due to the body as well?
So it's a little bit of both, Mark. The flare, the ultra-sharp images, that is a direct, you know, it comes directly from the lens. But as far as that 3D look, that pop, you know, I've been trying to do everything I can to dissolve that theory and, you know, prove it wrong. And I'll tell you what, the Sony comes very, very close. Like, you know, I brought both into the studio with off-camera flash. I brought both into the field over the past month, and just, you know, took a shot, switched the lens onto the other, took the same exact shot, brought it back into the studio, and compared images. And, you know, directly next to each other, they're very close, but the Leica still, it stands out a little bit with more of a 3D look to it, where the Sony can look a little bit more flat. You know, and it's, I'm being overcritical of these images, but there is a little bit of a difference with the Leica.
Okay, yeah, interesting. I've never shot with one with myself, but I'm just looking at the pictures that you've sent me. There's a certain thing that perhaps only another photographer would notice, but at the end of the day, if the client loves the image, they obviously don't know what camera it's shot on, but they can appreciate there's some reason that they love the image. So yeah, it's win-win. Can you easily put the Leica lens onto the Sony for us now, just to show us how that looks, or do you not have the adapter there?
So the adapter is actually made by Voigtlander.
Okay, cool.
There's a few adapters actually that are out there. This was one that I had seen pretty good reviews on, and all it is there's no glass in between. All it is it takes the Sony mount and converts it to the M mount for the Leica.
Okay.
And you're going from, I'm going from a manual focus to another manual focus. So I'm not losing anything in this, you know, conversion.
Sure.
And that looks pretty sexy, doesn't it?
Oh, all black, yeah. And how's the weight distribution there like?
It's awesome. The adapter has a little bit of weight to it, which puts the weight right at, you know, right at the base of the camera, and the lens itself is pretty light, so all the weight is right where you want it to be, right at the palm of your hand.
Okay, and is that the 35 Voigtlander?
This is the 50mm Leica Summilux lens.
Oh, Summilux, okay. Cool. All right then. So just so that we get a rough idea of how much these things cost, that the lens that you've got on there, do you remember how much you paid for that one?
So the Leica lens, they have different versions. You know, the Summilux, I believe, represents speed for them. It's their 1.4 version lenses. The Summicron, I think it's called, I could be saying that wrong, is more for sharpness, I believe. But I mean, this is as sharp as I've ever seen a lens with Nikon and Canon. And the Summicron lenses go down to f2 or open up to f2. So these are the more expensive ones. This, I believe, cost me $4,200, brand new. So it's, you know, it's an expensive lens. And like every other piece of gear I own, I spent a lot of time shooting it before I actually bought it. I have the unique opportunity to review equipment, test equipment, and especially with something this expensive, I shot this for at least 2 months and forced myself and tried to talk myself out of buying it. Believe me. But you can see from the flare, like, that's such a unique look. And if I was to show you 100% crop of one of the images, the sharpness, along with both of these cameras, is just crazy good. So while the price is high, it's, you know, with the newer Zeiss Otis, I believe they're called, those lenses, they're around the same price. They're a higher end lens that, you know, they're very popular, but they're more popular because you can use them with Nikon and Canon. And, you know, as soon as I mention I spent $4 grand on a Leica lens, people like look at me like I'm crazy. But believe me, it is worth every penny. And if it makes my images and it gives me the look I want, then it's definitely worth every penny to me.
Okay, cool. So if someone's watching this and they like the look of the A7 II, they're not ready to splash out that much on a Leica. That's a perfectly reasonable thing to say, I think. Where would you direct them in terms of a good prime lens that they can use with this?
So especially with somebody just starting out and you want to have the autofocus capabilities. You don't necessarily want to start off manually focused, especially for a wedding. Like I would never bring this manual focus to a ceremony while and try to catch live action manually. But Sony does have a small selection of very good lenses. When Sony decided to come out with these new bodies and this new line of lenses, they came out with the bodies first. The A7, the A7R, the A7S, with these awesome sensors, smaller light bodies, but their lenses, they don't have a huge selection of lenses. And I know they're working on that. I spoke to their reps at WPPI. They have a lot of portrait lenses, quicker lenses that are going to come out towards the end of this year. So I'm excited to see what they come out with, because you're right. When I'm telling people about this camera, about how awesome it is, the first thing they say is, well, you're using a $4,200 lens on there. And while that, yeah, it is true, what I'm seeing, especially even with the 70-200 f4, my wife just took some pictures of me outside the other day with this, and just as sharp. The beautiful images. So at f4, it's not something that I would expect that I personally would like, and I'm loving it. It's a great lens, and it's a Sony lens with autofocus. So it is. They're on the cheaper side, just like the bodies are a little bit on the cheaper side compared to the DSLRs of Canon and Nikon. The lenses and the bodies that are being offered by Sony are definitely there to save photographers a few bucks compared to the alternative Nikon and Canon setups.
Cool. So with an adapter, I could sling on, say, a 1.8, 51.8 onto that. Is that right? Well, like a Nikon or a Canon one?
Yep. And I know there's a few photographers, studio photographers, wedding photographers that I personally know that have put their Nikon lenses on, their Canon lenses. You just have to buy the right adapter, and from what I know, they absolutely love it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think if I had this body, I'd be tempted to throw on one of those cheap and light and fast, just those 1.8s, those 50s, or even the 35 1.8Gs. There's the Nikon that's just been released, and that's an awesome lens. I think it would complement it well.
The 50, if I was to buy a Nikon adapter, like you said, the 50 1.8, the 85 1.8, I mean, that's one of my favorite lenses by Nikon right now. It's super sharp, and it's less than half the price of the 1.4 version, and it's, for something like this, it's super sharp, awesome clarity. It would be perfect on here. The only thing you're losing is the autofocus ability, and you get used to it.
Yeah, sure. And just the lightness of it, I think, would be a perfect balance for such a small body. It wouldn't be top heavy and anything. So yeah, that's great that you've found a totally new system, the Sony system, and you're running with that. It's something that I haven't used in the past, and I'm sure a lot of other people out there will be interested to hear. I'm not quite sure if I'm going to put the review up after this or before this video, but yeah, I'm going to link back to that so people can have a look at the actual images that you've taken with this camera. I think what's really interesting about you and your gear setup is that you obviously know, as does every other photographer out there, that there's not one perfect camera. Like, we all wish there was one. I don't quite know what that would be, but you're taking the best of each of these different camera systems and the different camera lenses and using them in different situations to get the desired result, which is very interesting way to go about it. And I know a few other photographers off the top of my head, Ross Harvey, who I interviewed before on Shotkit, who uses a 5D Mark III, and I think it's the 51.2 as well, just to capture a certain type of backlit flare shot. So I think, yeah, there are photographers like you who use a particular camera just for one situation, and that's working for you, and I think that's great. So yeah, just to bring the interview to an end here, I'll just hand back to you. I'm super grateful for your time today, and also all the work that you've done for Shotkit, the reviews in the past. I'm sure it wouldn't be unfair to say that they are the most popular reviews on the site. So I'll just hand back to you. Maybe you could just say a few final words, and then we'll call it a day.
Awesome, Mark. Well, as much as I know you appreciate the time that I put into Shotkit, I mean, I I appreciate the fact that, you know, when you originally reached out to me, you know, and you and me, you know, this is the first time we've talked to each other, but, you know, we've actually grown to be, you know, a pretty cool friendship between you and I, and we're on opposite ends of the world. So it's very cool. And one of the biggest things about, you know, photography is the social aspect of it. You know, I've met so many awesome people, awesome photographers, and, you know, you have that commonality between you, and the love for photography, whether it be weddings or portraits or whatever it is, landscape photography. So, you know, I love what you did with Shotkit. Shotkit's an awesome website, and there's really nothing like it out there. And, you know, once I talked to you and got to know you a little bit, I wanted to be part of it, man. So I appreciate you letting me do that, and appreciate you doing the interview. I know I always talk about gear, and I try not to, as much as I can. You know, like I said, my wife yells at me because it's too much money. But you know, I appreciate you sitting down, talking with me today, just going over, having me explain a little bit to everyone about when they see me carrying bags of every manufacturer's equipment and wondering what I'm doing. There is a method to my madness to a degree. At least I hope there is. I hope I know what I'm doing. But yeah, I appreciate it. I really do. And hopefully, you know, once I get this review up, and I continue to, you know, we continue to work together. Shotkit's an awesome website, man. You did a great thing with that.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I'm happy that you think that. All right, great. So I'm just going to finish off by saying I'm going to put all the links to Jay's work and to his Shotkit entry and to all the things that you mentioned there. I'm going to put those in the post. So by the time you watch this, hopefully that'll all be there. So thanks for your time, Jay. It's Sydney, over here in Sydney, it's 9 a.m. So I'm going to get about my day. What time are we? Where are you, actually? I didn't actually say that at the start.
We're just about to hit 6 p.m. here.
In New Jersey, is that right?
Yep, in New Jersey. So my day it's dinner time for me, and it is just breakfast time for you. And I'm glad we figured that out within the past couple of days too, because I was
oh my God, that was such hard work trying to work that one out. All right, Jay, I'm going to leave you to the rest of your evening. So thanks very much again.
All right, Mark, appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
Catch up soon. Bye.
Bye.